Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 24/7 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey, y'all, welcome back into Cover 3's College Football Summer School. And today we're going to talk a little Illini, a little Illinois football. And to do that, I'm going to bring on one of 24/7's best experts, Jeremy Werner of the Illini Inquirer. Jeremy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, bud. How you been?
I've been well, man. Just knocking these out. I feel like I'm learning so much, and we're just pretty blessed to have this kind of resource at 24/7 Sports with all these team experts. And I don't know if you've heard any of the prior episodes. Basically, just go through my research. Been reading, reading II and figuring out kind of what the team's going to be, and then have some questions. And of course, co-host Tom Fernelli is a big Illinois guy as well. He's actually live on Cover 3 right now, but due to everybody kind of missing a lot of time in May and June, we're trying to do these ahead of time. So Bielema comes to Illinois, and some, I guess, promising results in year one, and at times maybe some frustrating results. Power ratings had these guys as like a top 75-ish team. Really great start, beating Nebraska in the upset, and then a very, I guess, disappointing follow-up in the month of September. But 1-5 in games decided by 7 or fewer points, but also like a lot of punts in opponent territory, which I feel could lead to some close losses if you do that a lot. What's the general feeling there in Illinois about the Illini?
Yeah, I think there's mixed feelings of last year, but I think, Bud, after 5-6 years of Illinois being an embarrassment, basically, I think having a competitive team week in and week out, and every game except for the Wisconsin game, Illinois was basically in during Big Ten play. They had a positive point differential for the first time during Big Ten play in a decade. They scored more points than their opponents in Big Ten play. Like, that's a huge step forward, where Illinois had some really frustrating losses, had a 7-point lead over Maryland with 5 minutes left, lost by 3, inexplicably, right? Had a lead against Purdue in the fourth quarter, as you mentioned. Bret Bielema punts, and when his offense couldn't do much, and was already in Purdue territory, and basically lost the game because of that. But Ryan Walters is a star defensive coordinator, and he put together a defensive package that was just, to be honest with you, a modern defensive package, unlike we've seen under Lovie Smith, where he's going to make quarterbacks think, college quarterbacks. He's going to make them think pre-snap, confuse them, and then he's going to put his guys in positions to succeed with a 3-man front, using 5 defensive backs. Like, this isn't ridiculously new stuff, but it's new for Illinois. And Ryan Walters did a great job developing talent like Kirby Joseph. He got the most out of guys like Owen Carney and Isaiah Gay, who have moved on. But you saw huge strides on the defense, where they were last in the Big Ten in scoring defense. During conference play under Lovie Smith in 2020, they were 4th last year, behind some really, really good defenses in the Big Ten. So you saw huge strides on that side of football. They were good enough, to be honest with you, to kind of be like Purdue on that side of the ball and be the surprise of the Big Ten West, except their offense was absolutely awful. And that's not all on the staff, because they didn't inherit a lot at the quarterback position or wide receiver position. But Tony Peterson just did not put his players in positions to succeed. Isaiah Williams did not get the ball enough, a dynamic playmaker, and they just weren't able to throw the ball consistently. There were so many games where they were in double digits passing yards. One of the worst passing offenses on college football. So Bret Bielema showed some urgency and replaced him with Barry Lundy Jr., which is kind of the big storyline going into next year, Bud. But there was some great strides of competitiveness, of improving the defense, but the offense actually took steps backwards, which is why Tony Peterson is now at Illinois State and not at Illinois anymore.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and start there on the offense. I mean, the team made massive improvements overall, but obviously, as you noted, I mean, it was mostly defensive improvement. The offense, kind of, thank God for Northwestern, right? Otherwise, it would have been right there as one of the very worst in the Power 5. A lot of interesting parts for this offense that I could see this taking a jump if everything clicks. You bring in Tommy Devito from Syracuse, and I, being an ACC guy myself, like, I've seen Devito play a lot. I've actually seen him since his junior year of high school when he was in Jersey. From my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, they have to think, hey, if we can protect this kid, he's got something. And Syracuse really could never protect him.
Yeah, I think Tommy DeVito, what they like about him is one, he was able to get here for spring ball. So he was
Yeah.
able to get here early. They could run with him because Art Sikowski, who is kind of the most proven guy of this group, and it's not all great proven, even though he had an injury last year, he's out for spring ball with two different injuries. So he'll be back to push DeVito. But I think people who saw Syracuse saw that there's talent there. There's a lot of arm talent. There's a swagger about him. And, obviously with Dino Babers in 2019, he put up some really good numbers, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but just wasn't able to stay healthy. And then Dino kind of changed his offense, went to more of a run style quarterback with Garrett Schrader. So DeVito gets another opportunity. I don't think he's guaranteed to be the starter, but I think he's got a good chance to be it. But yeah, I mean, protecting the quarterback is going to be really, really important. And that's going to be interesting to watch because they do have to replace 3 starters on the offensive line. The good news is they bring both their bookend tackles back, Julian Pearl and Alex Palczewski, and they're really high on Palczewski, a 6-year guy who's going to set the record maybe for college football for career starts. He's going to be close to maybe 60 by the end of his career, which is just nuts. But then they brought in 2 JUCO guys, Isaiah Adams and Zy Chrysler, to help out, and they moved Alex Pilstrom, a former walk-on tight end who started games at offensive line, to center. So they feel better about how big they are up front. They have some experience coming back. The other thing is, but they should be able to run the ball. Like Chase Brown is one of the best running backs that I don't think a lot of people in the country know. He's one of 12 running backs in Illinois history, which they got a good history of running backs to run for 1,000 yards in a season. That was last year, and he didn't even really play in 2 of those games. So he's one of the best backs in the Big Ten in the country. Josh Mccrae ran for 500 yards as a freshman. He's kind of a bowling ball, 6'1", 240. And they got a lot of depth there, including some freshmen coming in. But my question is, can they protect DeVito? Can DeVito keep the ball from opponents' hands? And who's he throwing to? Isaiah Williams, I think, is in for a big year with Barry Lunny. I think Barry Lunny's going to get him the ball in space with quick hits. He did that with Zachary Franklin a lot at UTSA. But do they have another guys? Brian Hightower, Pat Bryant, a guy like Sean Miller, top 600, 700 recruit in the country. Can those guys step up? The passing game is still the big question. And I think Tommy DeVito has talent, but I thought Brandon Peters had talent too. It's can they put it all together in their short time at Illinois?
But it's interesting that Palczewski comes back. He's a 6th-year guy.
Yeah,
so he's using
as a true freshman at 270 pounds.
Yeah. So I had him as a cross off on the. This is why I love doing these. That's huge. I mean, because you get him back, you get both your tackles back. You mentioned the converted tight end. Several of the. And I'm not saying this kid's going to be a first-round NFL pick, but come Thursday night, we're recording this on Monday, full disclosure, and we'll drop it later in the week or next week. But several of your tackles that are going to go first round or early second round in the NFL draft actually were 235-pound or less tight ends coming out of high school. So certainly everybody progresses physically at a different rate, and I wouldn't write that off. I mean, that's encouraging. So I sense a little bit of skepticism from you in the receiving corps. I mean, it seems like they're bringing back a ton of experience. You just kind of question the overall ability level other than Isaiah.
Yeah, just because they haven't done it. But Kamari Thompson's an experienced guy, but he's probably a 3rd stringer right now, former Mizzou guy, track guy. Hightower's a former 4-star prospect, and he had a really good year 2 years ago, kind of opposite Josh Amator-Bebe. Had 3 touchdowns, was tied for the team lead in that 8-game season. And then last year, he barely played. He had some injuries, but there was just something weird. Tony Peterson wouldn't really talk about like what was up with Brian Hightower, but he seems to be replenished. George Mcdonald, the wide receivers coach, has talked a lot about him. And then in the spring game, he had 4 catches for 80 yards. So he's the big physical kind of move the chains guy they lack and have lacked the last couple of years. Casey Washington does come back. He played well towards the end of the year. And I think Isaiah Williams could be in, quite honestly, for 1,000 yards from scrimmage this year. I thought he has the capability. He's a former quarterback, for people who don't know, top 247 prospect. Alabama, Ohio State, Texas A&M, all these big schools offered him as a wide receiver, but he wanted to play quarterback. So he made that transition last year under Bielema because they want more of the pro-style passer. And he was great last year when he got the ball in his hands, but he just didn't get the ball in his hands enough due to play calling and quarterback ineffectiveness. So I think with a full year at wide receiver, I think he's in for a big year, but he has to be, because I think he's the most irreplaceable person on this entire Illinois roster, just because they don't have another playmaker on the perimeter quite like him.
See, these are great notes, and why I love doing this series. I mean, Hightower last year, what, 0 catches, 16 routes run.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's going to be maybe their best guy, like that's just something you wouldn't pick up looking at a preseason magazine. It's why you need to go to our 24/7 sports experts at Illini Inquirer. Let's go ahead and switch over here to the defensive side of the ball. By almost any power rating, they were top 40 last year. I mean, like that's opponent adjusted, and not the Big Ten West has great offenses, but still, like that's opponent adjusted, so it takes into account that. Very bend but don't break. I felt like, which for Walter showed some scheme versatility. Now, I was probably less bend and don't break than what Lovey ran, because I felt like Lovey was bend break there. But at Missouri, he was extremely aggressive, and Illinois a little bit less so, probably fitting to the talent. Let's start defensive line. A decent amount of experience. I have some questions about the depth. What do you see there?
Yeah, you hit it on the head, bud. They lose Roderick Perry, who I think was kind of an unsung hero of this team. He missed the last couple games due to injury, but at nose guard, he's not going to get a lot of the stats. But, if you look up the PFF numbers, the pressures, he was number 3 on the team, which is a lot for a nose guard.
Yeah.
And he was just consistent. He was just really consistent. And he kind of helped Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton, the 2 stars of this defensive line, really emerge as these all Big Ten honorable mention guys. But Keith Randolph, he played basketball until he was a junior in high school, didn't play football until he was a junior, was with E.J. Liddell as a basketball player, and they won back-to-back state titles here in Illinois. He really took a huge leap. He's 6'5", 300 pounds, really athletic, versatile, just really disruptive. And then Johnny Newton was a high school running back and the offensive player of the year in Tampa and in his area. And he's just, for a big guy, he's really athletic, really disruptive, the kind of defensive lineman that they really haven't had a lot of since Ron Zook left. So those 2 guys form a great foundation. But you're right, Bud. The depth is a concern, and it's why they've added a couple transfers. They're adding Rashawn Wilkins from Vanderbilt. They've already added T-Rod Edwards from Northwestern, because I don't think they have a lot of confidence in Calvin Avery, Vertus Brown, 2 highly ranked gets for Lovie Smith in recruiting, but 2 guys that just haven't made a consistent impact yet. So Vertus Brown started the spring game with the starters at nose guard, so we'll see if he can take a step forward. But they are concerned about depth because, as you know, Bud, you need 6 to 8 defensive linemen, especially with the injuries that happen in the Big Ten. And I don't think they feel comfortable yet. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had another in the transfer portal.
It strikes me that we spoke of Hightower a little bit ago. I'm down here in Florida, but Hightower and Brown, 2 guys who might have been a little bit closer to their ceiling, but came in with an okay floor, I guess. You know what I'm saying? But like every recruit's rated highly for different reasons. Some are more ultimate potential. Some are more combination of floor and ceiling. To the back 7 we go. Jeremy, they lose an awful lot at linebacker, and I think some of these DBs they lost. I mean, Joseph was a total stud, I thought, and like Adams is gone, right? I have him as a cross off here. He's pretty good too. What? There's going to be a drop off here, I assume. How big?
Yeah, I don't think they think there's going to be a huge drop off.
Oh, okay.
That's because at linebacker, Jake Hansen, you lost him. He battled injuries most of his career, but especially the last 2 years, and he wasn't even available for the team the last 7 games. So Tariq Barnes played a big role on the team last year, one of the leaders in tacklers, basically every stat for Illinois. He showed himself to be a solid quality Big Ten linebacker. And then C.J. Hart was the star, the defensive star of the Nebraska win, but tore his ACL in the final quarter of that game. But he's back fully healthy. They think they have 2 quality starters there. My question, again, is depth. They got some redshirt freshmen that they're excited about, Kenenna Odeluga, Dillian Rosiak. They got a former walk-on, Isaac Darkangelo, that they like. I have questions of whether those guys can be a Big Ten starter. And as we know, linebackers are a position where you hit so hard that injuries certainly can happen. So I think if they can stay healthy there, they feel good. But that's the question. The outside linebackers, I want to mention them. We kind of mentioned them with the defensive line. Seth Coleman is a former 4-star prospect for 24/7 Sports. They think he can be a star. They think even with Carney and Gay leaving their best pass rushers, that he can take on a big role. And former 4-star prospect Alec Bryant, transferred from Virginia Tech, he's going to be in the mix with Ezekiel Holmes. They feel they have a lot of depth at that position, that they can rotate those guys more. But going to the secondary, Kirby Joseph, no one had as a breakout candidate going into last year. and he enters in the starting lineup in the third or fourth game and ends up being an all Big Ten guy. Unbelievable development by Ryan Walters, the safeties coach, who's also the defense coordinator. And Kirby's probably going to be, again, we're recording this before the draft, but probably going to be third, fourth round pick somewhere in there. It's an amazing story, but they didn't think he was going to be that last year. And it's credit to Kirby and Ryan Walters, but they do return a couple really good players. Sidney Brown had his best years in Illini, and he had a great sophomore year. But he kind of looks like Troy Polamalu, and he plays like him. They kind of move him everywhere around the defense. I call him the amoeba because he's just kind of playing games with the quarterback back there. And you talk about being aggressive, kind of hiding what they're going to do defensively. Sidney Brown is the key to all of it. And I think he can be an all Big Ten guy. Devin Witherspoon was all Big Ten honorable mention at cornerback. And they feel like they have the talent to kind of fill in behind those guys. Quan Martin was a nickelback last year, started for them. They feel great about him coming back. And then corner, they do have a question the opposite side of Devin Witherspoon. Taz Nicholson's a redshirt sophomore, kind of his time to come up, but they also had a transfer, Terrell Jennings, that they're hoping can compete for that job. And then at free safety, Kendall Smith is a sixth-year guy that they're bringing back, who's kind of bounced around the roster, played wide receiver, played corner, last year played safety. He had an interception in the spring game, looked pretty good. Not as athletic as Kirby Joseph, but maybe can have that kind of veteran savvy. And then they got a talented kid, Prince Green, who's a redshirt freshman, who's 6'3", 205, kind of built like Kirby Joseph, but just really inexperienced. So they actually, I think, feel better about the secondary than anywhere, just because Sidney Brown, Devin Witherspoon, and Quan Martin are really good players.
I mean, Jeremy, where do you see them going? Do they have scholarships remaining to attack the portal post-spring?
Yeah, they do. They've been aggressive with the blue shirt thing, which I don't know how many listeners know about the blue shirts, but they've already added 4 blue shirts, 2 prep guys, 2 transfers, but they still have 2 initials by my count that they can add to the class of 2022. So they've looked at wide receivers. They've offered a JUCO kid. They've offered, or they're looking at a kid from Western Illinois. But I still think they're looking to build up the depth of the line of scrimmage, which isn't a surprise with Bret Bielema or the Big Ten. They could add another offensive lineman that they can develop, maybe be here a long term, but also provide some short term depth. And then defensive line, I think they'd like another rotation player, and they hosted Devin Drew, a Texas Tech defensive line transfer, for an official visit. So that shows they're at least interested in adding that position.
So I think the formula is not terrible offense, but maybe just like make the jump to below average offense nationally and maintain a somewhat above average defense. You can get to a bowl game with this schedule. Wyoming, UVA, Chattanooga. I project UVA to take a pretty big step back, just being an ACC guy, looking who they lost, and you get them early, obviously, in September 10th at Illinois. Am I crazy to think bowl game here?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think the Vegas over-under, I don't know if it's changed, Bud, but it'll probably be 3.5, 4, just because Illinois is kind of, it would kind of be unproven. I'd set it at 4.5, 5. Given the schedule, given the defensive strides they made, and let's be honest, the offense can't get worse. And I think Barry Lunny Jr. comes with a lot of credibility from what he did at UTSA. I don't expect him to turn this from what Walters did last year. I think that says more about Lovie Smith's defense the year prior, that he didn't get enough out of the guys he had. But Ryan Walters deserves a ton of credit for that. If he can maintain that, have a middle-of-the-road Big Ten defense, and then your offense takes a leap from last in passing to maybe 10th, 9th in passing, then that's a formula for a bowl game. I mean, Illinois has made making bowl games look very, very hard over the last decade. I don't think it's going to be that hard. I think they should have made one last year if they had a better play caller. So I think bowl game should be the goal. I would probably predict a 5-17, but I don't think a bowl game is outside the realm of possibility or a crazy prediction.
For sure. Guys, we will stay tuned to Illini Inquirer. Jeremy Werner, really appreciate the time. Learned a whole lot today and look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thanks, bud.
All right, that's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today, but don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast, and we'll see you all soon.